Okay, welcome to this edition of the Don Cherry's Grapevine podcast. And Dad, a lot of people are wondering, we talked about it last week, just how's your bird feeder coming along? Have the squirrels gotten into it yet?
Cannot get into it, and every morning I see him, he dances on it. He about broke the other one. Yeah, they're pretty expensive. But I cross-threaded that one, like I told you.
So I got to ask you a question, though. Did you mean to cross-thread it?
No. I didn't. Naturally, I wouldn't. So I thought, wait a minute, cross-threaded. That's a good idea. No, I did not mean. And it's really funny. It's funny how he must have really taken the bird seed down, because it's pretty good now. I haven't. And let's see the birds I have. I have blackbird, red-winged blackbirds. I have those cackles. I have chickadees. I have my favorite is the goldfinch, a sparrow. It's a funny thing. I haven't seen many sparrows.
No, not for some. Yeah, for some reason there's very.
I don't know what happened to the sparrows. Like the sparrows, you used to remember, Cindy. You used to be over at the.
Oh yeah. They were in flocks and all. Do you have any cardinals?
Cardinals are there.
Lots of
Blue
cardinals
jays.
this year. Blue jays.
But no sparrows.
No.
I don't understand it. Anyhow, I've got them beat. I kind of feel bad, and there's two of them. And they're buggers. Remember the time I had the truck? Remember the time? And I and I'm not kidding. The truck was loaded. I mean, right to the gunnels with
underneath the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, you stored it for the winter.
I started, and I thought, this doesn't sound right. And I lifted the hood, and it should have gone into the. Believe it or not. It was right to the hood of cones, eh?
Yeah, all the pine cones. And,
all those little red squirrels did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, now that I think of it, I get in the car, and I'm driving the car. All of a sudden, he's in the car. He's in the truck. He's in the truck, and he goes bananas.
No.
Honest to God, he went bananas. He bing, 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 bing. He's going like he's afraid, eh?
Yeah, well,
and I opened the window, and he went right out the window. Holy, talk about it. You think I wasn't afraid. And
You're like you didn't get in an accident.
I was like he was like it was like in a movie set. Bing,
you get skittish by a lot of animals. How about the muskrat in your rowboat?
Oh, that wasn't a rowboat. That was I had a nice boat.
The Sunray. It was a tri-hull Sunray.
Yeah, it was, that was a good boat. And I get in it, and I heard chat, 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 and I sat there, and the biggest muskrat in the world was in the front, and he looked at me and he went chat, chat. If he had gone underneath where the transom was, I said, I'm getting out and leaving. But he went, and he'd eaten a hole in the canvas, and he went out the hole. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That was November. I'll tell you what, that was in November, like a fool. I didn't start putting the boat away till November 23rd.
Yeah, and then you had the thing with the skunk with Blue and the skunk.
Don't talk about that one. You could smell our house for the next.
Everybody has their skunk story, but I mean, and I listen to it all being the ex-dog groomer that I am, because everyone has a skunk. But I have to say, yours tops for skunk stories.
Here's what happened. It was my first Blue. God love her. And it was a big skunk. And she chased the skunk, and they fell down a well.
The window well.
Window well. And she went down the window well after. Well, it was so strong, the skunk sprayed, and it was a steel door, like leading to the thing. It took the paint. That's how strong it was. It took the paint off the door, and they fell down a well. And she's down there fighting with him. So I reached down and I pull her out, and she is now she is being sick by both ends, because it's so strong.
It was like somebody dumped water on her.
It was unbelievable. It wasn't like spray. It was like it was dripping off her. So I was using towels out the back. I'll never forget it. And newspapers. I was using newspapers, and the newspaper went over to the thing, and the wind took up the newspaper, and she looked like she went, "That's round one," and she was going after the squirrel again, and you. For the next 2 years, when she'd get a little wet, you could smell her, and people that had skunk, and you could smell our house, like from the road.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I remember what I was amazed by was how that goop, we'll call it goop for lack of a better word, we all know what it is, it disintegrated the screen in the window and the window
Yeah.
well. The metal actually incinerated. It was that bad.
And I went down the basement, and it was a big male. It was like, usually they run away. It was hitting the glass trying to get at me. It looked like a Disney movie. And, for the next 5 years, when she was alive, she'd go right over and look at the window.
How'd you get the skunk out of the window well?
What I did was, I said, how am I ever going to get this thing out? It was I put a board down with and it got out. Yeah. But I tell you, I've had some great experiences around here.
With animals.
I get bit. Remember, I got bit in the eye because it was too cheap. They wanted to turn the light off.
Oh yeah, I got hornet stung you in the eye. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had some great things.
Yep. Well, I guess the big news coming out of the National Hockey League is it looks like we're going to be doing a 24-team playoff format. So what do you?
And the first teams get a bye.
Well, I've read a couple of different things. The first teams get a bye, so that would be in the East. It would be Boston, Tampa, Washington, Philly, and then the West, the St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas. But then I was reading that they're talking about that those teams would play a round-robin tournament to see who's going to be seeded first.
Oh, boy.
So, but I don't think...
The team that was first should be first.
Right, because I think Cassidy, he was with Boston. I don't think he's too happy with the whole situation.
No, what happens is if they don't do that, which sounds ridiculous, but if they don't do that, the guys will have a bye. We had a bye one time. And I tried to keep them busy, and we were first spot. And you can't. You take 50. Hockey players are cheap, and we took $50 a game. It didn't matter. It just wasn't the same. It was like a scrimmage. I don't blame Cassidy for me because like say Toronto plays Columbus. Like just say Toronto plays Columbus, they'll be what I call battle hardened. If it goes 3 games. And there's Boston sitting there, haven't played in 3 months. All the first place clubs haven't played in 3 months. The other teams will be getting in the groove. I call it in the groove. Goalies will get in the groove. Everybody will get in the groove. 3 out of 5. And if I was a first place club, I'd be very upset.
Yeah, because well, first of all, if they play a shorter, we've talked about this before, but if they play a shorter series.
Goalies, any goalie can get hot. I remember we had the very first year I was in Boston, we had Phil Esposito and Tony Esposito. They had a little war going. Yeah. Phil could always score. So we beat Tony. It was that deadly how they ever got it was a 2 out of 3, just brutal. Because what happened is you get a hot goalie, you're done. And we beat them, I think, 8-1 or something. I forget. We really hammered them and had in the paper, Espos finished, they go to see everybody. And you couldn't get a P by them after that. And we were out in the first round. Now, I take the Stanley Cup champions or finals, I take them out in the first round. I mean, I really did a great job. And I remember that one of the guys, don't worry, be there. I think the last game we shot them, 52-18?
Something like that, yeah.
This is what I remember about it. I came back in the summer. I was up in here, Canada, and you played The Who over. I Won't Get Fooled Again, and over and over. Washing your car. You played that song constantly. Do you remember that?
I remember. I didn't know who was by, but I just kept playing it over, and they said, "Don't worry, Don.
We'll be ready.
We'll be there when the bell rings." And Bobby Orr was unbelievable. That was the year he had 42 goals, 89 assists, plus 123, and then he came in after and he said he didn't play good for me. I mean, like I did. I looked at. After all the reports.
So had they won the Stanley Cup before you got there?
No, they'd won it the year before.
No, the year before.
And they went to the finals, and I made a big mistake that year. I remember I was a progressive coach or tried to be, whatever it was. I played that. I made them watch that game again. I thought, they'd be mad, and they were mad. All right, they were mad at me, And I remember Bobby Orr coming and said, "Why did you play that again?" Like, you know, what, like, and
So much for video, eh?
yeah, that was my last.
That was the end
That was
of-
my last.
First shot at the can
Yeah,
for
and
using a video,
What
and
a
that's
dumbhead
it.
I was playing that again.
You used
All
to
I
show
did was-
fights after that. That's all you used to show.
Yeah, if we get beat 8-1 and we won, we never get beat 8-1. But if we got beat and we get one goal and we won 2 fights, I show the 1 goal and the 2 fights. But it was anyhow. And Tony beat us out, and that's what I'm saying. You get a hot goalie, you get Price. I mean, if he ever gets hot, he'd be like Patrick Waugh that time. Remember?
Yeah, when they won 11 overtime games.
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
you could say that. You could say that about Fleury.
Oh,
you could
any of
say
them.
that about Binghamton. You could because it's not. It's like everybody. A lot of guys they say they're real hockey fans aren't going to watch it. I'm excited to see.
Yeah,
it.
I think Columbus.
But it's like a tournament, though. It's going to be like
It
a
won't
world
be the
tournament.
Stanley Cup. It'll be like a world tournament or something like that. But, why they're doing it, and a lot of people think, oh, why would they do it? It's because the owners, this is where they make money. And I think it'll draw. I think they'll draw. I mean, I'd like to see Columbus and...
Yeah. Well, they said, but again, you get so much different information. But they looks like they're going to have it. They might have it in 2 or 3 cities with no fans.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about like either like Vancouver, Vegas, Edmonton, Toronto, and I even heard Winnipeg. And so like the teams would be there, and there'd be like 3 games a day at the rink and stuff like that.
I don't
So
know.
So where do they make their money? On TV? Or what
TV.
do they do? Oh,
TV. So
Yeah,
they should do 3-on-3. That's exciting. If they want to change it up.
I think the women are going to go 3-on-3. They're starting the league, aren't they?
Well, there's a 3-on-3 league that they're talking about getting going.
The only problem with you when you have it like right from the start, the players start and everybody starts figuring out, and
They start cheating.
Well,
and they pace themselves.
they pace themselves. Whereas where they have it now, they know it's over with. Bing, it's 1 goal, it's over with. It's pretty exciting. I think it'd be. I think it would be. I think they'd ruin it 3-on-3.
You like 3-on-3 for kids, don't you? Kids hockey.
I
or
love
not?
it. I remember one time when my grandson Dell was playing, and it was a lot of fun. And he was a goaltender, and it was a lot of fun. It was like
Well, a goalie has a lot of shots on 3-on-3.
but it was still good.
Yeah.
And then we got a guy who thought it was the Stanley Cup. I remember the game, and
It was
when
in
he
Ice
won,
Sports in Oakville. Yeah.
was it? And when the guy wanted him to change, he banged the and I said, I couldn't believe it. The guy, instead of letting them have fun, he was using it as the Stanley Cup. So this lady sitting beside, I was standing there, and she was saying, I says, it's the jerks like that ruin everything. He says, that's my husband.
I know. Hundreds of people there. You have one comment.
Yeah, and she says,
remember
that's my
that.
husband.
I heard about it after the game.
Yeah, I
trust
says, well,
me.
he's still a jerk. I said, instead of letting the kids have fun at 3-on-3, the guy, and when he'd want them to change, he did. And if they didn't change, it was like a Stanley Cup. Anyhow,
So
3-on-3.
so right now here are the matchups in the East. It's the Penguins and the Habs.
That's good. That'd be a good series.
The Hurricanes and the Rangers.
Well, that'd be a fast skating game.
Islanders and Panthers. And the Leafs and the Blue Jackets.
At least the Blue Jackets would be good. You
Yeah,
get away
that'll
from
be-
Boston anyhow.
Yeah, well, if everything goes according to Hoyle, then the winner of that team would play Boston.
Well, but if they don't if Boston just sits there and has a bye, they're battle hardened. I call it battle hardened. They're in the groove, and there's Boston, first place, worked hard.
They want to play for 6 months.
Yeah, the goalies, and you could have. It doesn't seem the same unless you're beat out, And I feel sorry for the first place clubs. I hope they don't have those buys, because I was in, and I just got through telling you one of the buys I was in, and you get a hot goalie, like I said, you could. Well, how about L.A. when they made it the last day of the season, and they won the championship with Sutter.
Yeah, because they had to play, as you said, they were battle hardened. They had to win every game for the last 6
they
weeks.
went for a month and a half, 2 months. They had to win every game, and then they get in the playoffs. They played the same way, which what I'm afraid of. I tell you what I'm really afraid of. I'm afraid the referees start calling like they do in the regular season. I mean, if they call the playoffs, like everybody loves the playoffs, it's a war because the referees are let. Oh, I know. I hate to say they let up a little bit, but and that's why the playoffs are always great. It's war, but if they ever start calling them like those chintzy penalties that they call during the regular season, I mean, that would be like like the regular season, which would be next to nothing.
And then in the West, it's going to be Edmonton and Chicago.
That'd be good.
Nashville and Arizona. The Canucks and the Wild. And I think one of the best ones will be the Flames and the Jets.
Oh, that ought to be. Oh, boy. I think the playoffs, all the makeups, I think it's good. And I like the extra guys making the playoffs. I even though Boston was the first place club, because I remember we used to go in. We'd go in sometimes. We go in February. Team would be out of the playoffs. I like it the way it is now. I like where everybody's battling right. I mean, I think it's more exciting to make the playoffs. To tell you the truth, the way they
the last week of the playoffs, everybody, how many. The reality is, you didn't even know if the Leafs were going to get into the playoffs this year because Florida was kind of coming on and the other teams are coming on. So. But it'll be interesting.
I always liked it. A lot of people like the flag. They call it the flagship. I mean, let's face it. Islanders were so popular. Boston was so powerful. I mean, everybody was at Philly had the whole deal, and then Edmonton was so good. I mean, with Messier and Gretzky and all those guys and everything, you almost knew who was going to win the cup.
Yeah.
Well, not now.
No,
I like it now. I like it now, where everybody's in the right to the end.
Yeah. Well, we were talking like if the referees call a lot of penalties.
Well, then
you look at the Leafs. All they got to do is just hang into a power play, and the same with Montreal. If Carey Price just hangs in there, keeps them in there, and they get it, and then bang.
They might for the first. They might call. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
The guy I'd like to talk about. Who else are we going to talk about? I'd like to talk about Cheevers.
Well, I don't know if you want to. We can talk about that, but we'll give a little plug that you're going to be this week. You're going to be on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to be. I got a call from Lou Nan. I call him Nanny. What do you call him? Nanny or Nanny? I don't know. I call him Nan, and he's living in Florida, and he's close to Bobby. He's close to Harry Sinnen, and they play golf in the same club. And it's pretty funny. I always remembered. I remember Harry.
Well, he was when you were coaching Boston. He was the
general
manager of Minnesota North Stars.
Yeah, he played for a long time.
He played for a long time too.
Yeah. And so Harry come to me and he says, "We're going to do will you tell a story about Cleveland and Minnesota getting together?" Don't.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good story.
So what happened was, I guess in 1978, Minnesota was in the Smythe division, and the Cleveland Barons were in the Cleveland Barons
out in the middle of a field.
Yeah, Cleveland Barons were in the Adams division, and I guess both were really struggling. So the two owners decided to merge the teams together, and then they would be.
Cleveland was in the NHL at one time?
Cleveland Barons, yeah.
Really? I thought they were American League.
I remember one time we were going out to Cleveland, and we were driving in the bus, and I said, "Are you sure?" We're down Duck Country Road, and the branches were actually hitting the bus. I says, "You sure we're going to a game where you're not lost?" He says, "No." He says, and we down this road, and we turn, and there's this big, beautiful arena out in the field.
Yeah.
That was the team.
That was Cleveland Barons. So I guess they didn't. So Minnesota wasn't drawing well, and they were not very good. They missed the whole playoffs, and Cleveland missed the playoffs a whole bunch of times. So they merged, and then I remember they asked. I don't know if it was an anonymous guy on the team or whatever. He goes, "Well, what's it like with two teams merging?" And the guy says, "Well, if you have one bag of what," and he goes, "You have another bag of what. You merge them together, you just have a bigger bag of what."
Well, anyhow, Minnesota turned pretty good.
Tell them about that commercial.
Yeah. So then,
the commercial. Yeah.
So then, what happened was in Minnesota, they moved from the Smythe division. They moved to the Adams division, where in our division of Boston.
Yeah. And Harry Sinnen, general manager of Boston Bruin, came to me and he said, gee, he says, they were good friends. They played together or something. And he says, we do a commercial for them. I said, geez, Harry, I don't know. I said, we have it pretty good with, just we beat them all the time.
And it's kind of quiet. Not much happens.
Not much happening. He says, oh, no, it'll be just. I said, well, what am I supposed to say? And I remember, I'll never forget this. I come out and I said, hey, guys, remember, who's in our division now? No, who's in our division now? All the guys.
And who were you talking to? The whole team, or?
No, we're talking to Ricky Smith.
Smith, John Wensink, and I think Jilly Gilbert.
Yeah.
I saw it once on YouTube, and I tried to find it.
That'd be funny
but
to see.
I'll try to get it, but I can't seem to
So
find
anyhow,
it.
I said, this. You want me to say this? I mean, I don't. He said, oh no. He says they'll just play it on TV. I said, oh, okay. And so I say, yeah, you better be ready in the division. You're in the Iron Division now.
That's what I remember you say. You said, hey, guys, guess who's in our division? And they go, who? And you go, Minnesota. And they all laugh.
Oh, nice.
And you said, yeah, you're gone from that Smythe division. Now you're in the Iron of the league now. You better be ready. And then Luke Nan came on and said, yeah, we'll be ready.
Yeah. So I thought, just run it on television and nobody'd see it. I think he ran it before every commercial. Every time we played them, he'd run that commercial to the players, and they'd get upset. And then, worst of all, now we're into this. I'm watching in between periods. I have to hit the thing, but Harry is on Minnesota television saying, this is what he said. He said, you're just disgraced that your team doesn't put up a better fight in the Boston Gardens when they come in here. Holy Dinah. We had a war every game. Remember, it was a guy named Alex Paris. Remember that?
Yeah, there was a fight. It was that was in I think it was 1977. Terry O'Reilly fought a guy named Steve Jansen, and then John Wensink fought.
It was
Alex
a war.
Paris. Yeah.
Those games were. I remember. I said, "Oh, we're playing Minnesota," and people go, "Why would you be excited about Minnesota?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's always a fun game."
And I remember Wensink went over and challenged the whole bench.
Was that the one when he bowed in front of the? Now that's on YouTube.
Yeah,
that is unbelievable. Can you imagine if anyone ever did that today?
Oh, Harry was upset about that.
He goes over to the bench and he bows and opens his
he said, come on, anybody come. Anyhow, that was Minnesota. That was the thing. So I'm going on, and the first thing I'm going to ask them is, do you remember doing that commercial?
Yeah, but there always seemed to be trouble.
Well, it was after that.
After that with Minnesota. But, I mean, Terry O'Reilly got into trouble.
Dennis Morrell, he threw his gloves at Dennis Morrell during a fight, and he come over to me. I was there, and he says, I'm going to call this game. And I'm in Minnesota. I said, well, go ahead and call it.
Well, because you got mad, you wouldn't put the players on the ice, right?
I don't know what I was doing. And I remember Frank Udaveri. I don't know to this day. I don't know. I think I was going down to talk to the goal judge or something, like some silly thing. And Udaveri and just called me every name. He was just livid because I said, call the game. What do I care? It's in Minnesota. And we had a war every day, every game. So that's the first question I'm going to ask them. Do you remember that, Lou? Mm. And
you don't want to tell about Schmatzy, do you?
No. Well, Bobby Schmal. All right, I'll tell a story about Bobby Schmatz. Bobby Schmatz living in Portland now. He can't get me now.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I saw him and I didn't mind the guys having a few beers, before the game and he was drinking vodka, and I said, "But Schmatzy, that's not." And he thought, oh, no, I'm all right. So it always happened in Minnesota. And Schmatzy got hammered, I guess. And he really had a bad hangover. Like, we hockey players never drank that hard stuff. I don't know why he was drinking.
And I think it was an afternoon game, too. So it was a quick turnaround.
He was dying. He was dying. So I started him. And he wouldn't quit, boy.
You started him.
I started him. And I made him play not penalty. I wouldn't give him the power play. I made him kill the penalties. We had a lot of penalties, and he was going, and he was dying. He was puking. Excuse that word. Mm-hmm. He was being sick to his stomach at the end of the bench. And one of the guys come to me and says, "You're going to kill this guy." I says, "I hope he dies." Anyhow, I'll never forget this play as long as I live. He's killing the penalty, and he comes out and he blocks a shot. And he blocks the shot. It goes out to center ice. and he goes in and he dekes the goalie, and he's so tired and so sick and everything, he falls in the corner. And the players had to help him off. And
Did he score?
Scored.
he scored.
Oh, so he went in and he scored.
And he fell in the corner. He couldn't get up.
Yeah, because I remember watching that game, and he fell in the corner, and literally the guys like had to pick him up.
I had to pick him up.
Well, you know what
drag
it looked like. I remember that game, and it was on TV or something.
Yeah, it
wasn't
was.
it? And he said, "Why are they so excited about him scoring the goal?"
No,
but they looked like they were congratulating him, but they were really picking him up.
Picking him up.
Well, no, like the guy thought, oh, Bobby Schmatz, it looks like he's injured. They thought he hurt his knee, so that was it. Because remember, I think he came back from a knee injury.
Yeah.
Oh no, looks like Schmatz hurt his knee, and then I think he put him out right next shift.
And then he said, Schmatz. And one of the guys says, "You're going to kill this guy." And, he says,
It's funny though, Dad. You say that like we're kind of making fun of it, but you handle that internally, and nobody knew. Like today, if that happened,
that happened today.
The guy would be sitting.
Well, you remember the time in, in Columbus? The two Russians got caught out. They're leading scorers.
Yeah, I think it was Columbus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Columbus. So the guy suspended. Who did he hurt? He didn't hurt the Russians. He hurt the team. And the players, the rest of the players, couldn't you keep that quiet? And I remember that now. Now that I think of it. And the guy said, and I said I would have handled it different. I was on Hockey Night in Canada, and the coach said, well, I guess one of the announcers lets the players run wild or something like that. But who did he hurt? He hurt. So then he ended up putting the Russians back in. Then they were up 3-2 at the time, eh? Columbus up 3-2 at the time.
Yeah.
But we've said that many times. You've never suspended a player. You never fined a player. We've said that many times.
Never.
You had your own way of
disciplining.
Yeah. Well, we all know that story in Rochester. You got rid of the top scorers. And
1-2. I'm not going to mention their names, and I told them not to go in this bar because the owners knew, and by golly, they ended up went in the bar. They went in the bar. I was okay. I called him up and I said, "There's your skates. You're gone." He said, "Well, you can't get rid of us. We're 1-2 in the scoring." I says, "You're gone."
And this wasn't like the night before a game. You couldn't go in the bar. You wanted this bar banned. They were not allowed at any time.
Yeah,
to
and
go
they went in
this
anyhow.
bar. And they went in.
So
gone.
The rest of the players knew, and they were 1-2 in the scoring too.
Well, I'll tell you, I learned a lot. I was in my teenage years about rebelling and all this. And I says, if Dad can do that to his two top scorers, imagine if I'm coming in late. And I said, you certainly set the precedent for being told what to do.
And then you told the story. One of your favorite ones in Minnesota. Somehow Minnesota beat Boston, and then you were walking to the hotel, and there was a lady that.
Oh no, I was the last guy out because I was the last guy out of the building. I remember Madonna. He was second to last guy out. So I'm walking up. Here's the lady standing there crying with her kid, and it was cold. Believe me. And they had the parkings like elephant, giraffe, and she says, and she was standing there crying. And so like a fool, I said, "Well, what's the matter?" She says, "Well, I can't get in my car." And they didn't have phones back in those days, and it was cold. And I figured it was, and in Minnesota, you could walk across to the hotel. It was like, so I wasn't dressed warm. And I went and got a coat hanger, and I went in, and I finally she didn't even say thanks. And I caught the worst cold I think I ever did. And
I remember you said you did it. She said to you, "Well, what a great game."
Yeah, we lost. Yeah, that was a great game, wasn't it? And we lost. And yeah, it was. But I remember I caught a cold you couldn't believe, and she didn't even say thanks. Get in the car. But I remember she was crying with her kid. Yeah, everything seemed to happen in Minnesota. Every time get in trouble, get suspended, would happen in Minnesota.
Okay, I was excited the other night, Dad. I was flicking through the TV, as most people are these days, and Slapshot was on. And we all know the movie, it's great and all, but this time at the Hollywood Suites, it had the good music. Because I have the DVD, and they didn't put the good music on the DVD, and a lot of the other times even. But
right back where we started from.
Oh,
Maxine Nightingale.
They all them, Elton John, and it was really, I taped it. It was a great show.
Yeah, what happened was with that is that when they got the music rights for the movie, they didn't secure the rights for the DVDs.
Oh, is that what happened?
So I go out and buy the DVD.
Me too.
I'm disappointed.
Oh, it's funny how the music makes it. You hate to say
For
it.
sure it did.
Well, like when they were coming back, right back where we started from in Saskatchewan and
Yeah, running back to Saskatoon and
Saskatoon, and she's and you know, it's funny they got that movie, and they that was a good movie, and I'll tell you a funny story about that. I didn't see it. All the guys saw it, and actually they go to see it, and they were calling me Reggie. What the hell are they calling me Reggie for? Like Reggie. And I had a coat. It was light blue, and it was a long leather coat. It was really, really nice, and it had a fur collar you could put on or take off. It was really in style, and the guys called me Reggie, and I did figure out what was Reggie, and then about a month later, I'm the last guy to see it. I figured that was the kid. That was Paul Newman's name, Reggie.
Reggie Dunlop.
Yeah, Reggie Dunlop.
There's, you know what? And I was looking for it. There's a shot of you on the bench and it must have been either a practice or an exhibition game or something, and and you got a turtleneck on, so it must have been a practice. And you have that coat, and that's the exact coat that Reggie Dunlop wore. And you're sitting there laughing, and Bobby's on the ice laughing. You must have had a joke. And again, I saw it, and I was looking for, what's those things I should grab when I see him, but I can't find it. But it's the exact same coat that Reggie Dunlop wore.
Yeah, it was a nice coat too.
Yeah, and then we think Nancy Dowd she wrote it. And we're thinking, Asani, that she took one of the scenes from.
No, I think she took a cut.
One of the scenes that she maybe read from the hockey news about Dad.
Yeah, because you made a point of laughing about it when the part where the dog's kissing the guy.
Oh,
and
yeah, well, you
everything.
tell that story.
Well, this is a true story in Rochester on Elm Drive, and you used to come home and go through the side door. And I think we talked about before, and Blue would be at there was 3 steps going up, and she would just greet you and. She'd
I'd
be
take my
licking your
boots off,
face and licking you, and you, oh, my sweetie, honey, bye, missed you so much. And the next door neighbor was hearing, and she goes, finally, a couple of weeks later, she says to Mom, I just wish my husband was as loving as your husband. And it was about the dog. And that's the big scene with the St. Bernard.
Right, because they do the same thing. You hear him, I love you, and then you go and he sees kissing the dog.
Kissing the dog. Oh, there's a lot of great scenes
I think
there.
Blue would just because I used to work hard on the jackhammer and that, I think you just licking the sweat off.
Or your aftershave. Tim, you had a good, interesting story about a friend that met Paul Newman.
Yeah,
about signing his DVD.
Yeah, I had a friend, Mitch, and he was working with a guy, and he told this story about Paul Newman, that he was shooting something with Paul Newman down during the Toronto Indy, and this was like a long time ago, and so he was done shooting the interview, and he said, Mr. Newman, can I have an autograph? And the guy says, Paul Newman just glared at him, and he says,
I don't think he gave autographs.
Nah, he wasn't too happy, but he said, oh, all right. So he went, he says, but let's go in my trailer. He says, I don't want people to see me signing autographs, because then you could sign autographs for it. So he went into the trailer, and this guy was sitting there, and Paul Newman, he gave Paul Newman a Sharpie, and then he says, Mr. Newman, I know I'm really asking a lot, and he pulled out a DVD of Slapshot. And he said, Paul Newman grabbed it, and he says, he just stared at it. He just stared at it, and he just goes, that was such a great movie. He says, I just loved this movie.
You said Al Pacino was...
Well, yeah, supposedly what happened was Nancy Dowd wrote this, and she wanted to make it a documentary.
Nancy Dowd, her brother played in the movie.
He's Ogie Oglethorpe in the movie.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's Ogie Oglethorpe in the movie. And his name's Ned. And the lead, Ned is the
young guy.
The young guy. That's the name that she used his brother's name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she wanted to make it a documentary at first. That's what she was working on. And then she got the script, and and Al Pacino got it, and he really loved it. And he said, I want to be Reggie Dunlop. And so he was helping her kind of push it around, and then he gave it to the director, George Roy Hill. And George Roy Hill did, he's won an Oscar. He did The Sting with Paul Newman, and he did Butch Cassidy's Sundance Kid with Paul Newman. So he wanted Paul Newman to play it. And so I guess him and Pacino kind of got into a bit of, I kind of gave you the script, and now you're giving to Paul Newman. And he says, well, Paul Newman can skate. Can you skate? And Al Pacino said, no, but that should make a difference. And he said, no, it's got to make a difference. So that's all Paul Newman.
I think one of the funny stories is Bruce Boudreau. That was his apartment that, remember, he was sleeping in, and that was his. They said, if I remember correctly, they said, we need that a single guy would live in an apartment. And I guess Newman looked at it, see, you live in here? But he had the big Canadian flag over the thing, remember?
Yeah. And that he was, well, you knew a couple of guys. Well, Connie Madigan
Mad
was in.
Dog Madigan played. Danny Belial, he was the guy that Paul Newman was beaten up on the ice, and I knew about 3 or 4 of them. Orgy Oglethorpe, and I think Orgy Oglethorpe was John Brophy. Like he was. Everybody was afraid of John Brophy down in that league.
Yeah, well, there was a guy named Goldthorpe. There supposedly that Oglethorpe was, and then they said Reggie Dunlop was supposed to be like Brophy or something like that, but that didn't make much sense.
No, it doesn't.
But Connie Madigan played Mad Dog.
Madigan.
That's what they call him. He's at the end when they're bringing all the tough guys out.
Yeah.
And they call him Mad Dog Madison. But
Y'all could skate too. You don't say. There was another guy, John Upton, I think it was the guy along the boards that had to go to the bathroom, remember? Yeah. And I never figured out why he came out. He said, donors was ladies of Spain. Ladies of Spain, I adore. And remember the guy who was playing on the organ?
Yeah.
And he said, don't ever play that again. I never figured that one out.
But I remember in Boston, he used to play that all the time.
Yeah, Ladies of Spain.
Ladies of Spain.
And then the guy said, yeah, I might be chicken shit, he says, but I might wear a wig, but I'm not like it. That was a great movie.
Well, I remember, too, that you said, Tim, you want to go to a movie? So I go, okay. Yeah, so we went, so 77, that was a movie, 76 or 77, so I would have been 13 years old. And it was rated R. And Nancy Dowd, the next year, she won an Oscar for a movie called Coming Home. She wrote Coming Home, won an Oscar. But she really got in a lot of flack because there was never a movie that had that much swearing in it.
How about the guy, how about the bus driver taking an axe to the bus? Yeah. And he said, what are you doing? And he says, I'm making it look tough.
So we go to Dad goes to, the lady looks and says, she looks at me, I'm 12 years old. She says, you're taking him to see that movie? She said, do you know how much swearing's in this movie? You said, he's heard it before.
Yeah. Now, when the Hanson brothers ordered the Chinese food, is that true that they got that story from Wayne Cashman, ordering Chinese food when he was in jail at one time? That was the thing they said that.
And I know Cash would be happy if he said it, but the story goes is that Cash got arrested, just for a little while, and
one phone call.
Yeah, and he's one phone call, and he said he says he can make one phone call, and 15 minutes later, a guy come in with Chinese food. Cash had Chinese. So I said, "Is that true, Cash?" He says, "Yeah." He said the cops had to pay for it. I don't want to be. I shouldn't say that, but anyhow.
Well, that was in the movie with the Hanson brothers.
Well, you said pretty much everything in
everything that happened in that movie happened except for one thing, stitching up on the bench. That never happened. He always went in the back. And I remember the first time the guy stitched me up with gloves on. I thought there was something wrong. He was putting gloves on before. Before that, I should tell a story all the time. I got stitches. But that's the only thing that was wrong with that movie. Believe me, worse things that have happened on the buses. I could go on the buses than happened in Slapshot. People wouldn't believe it.
Well, again, you wonder where she got some of the stories. With the police officers coming for the Hansons, that happened with you.
Oh, that happened. Like police, and I mean, I could someday we'll go through all that stuff and everything. But that movie was a great movie, I'll tell you, boy. And the guys just loved it. And like I said, they called me Reggie for a month, and I still couldn't understand why they called me Reggie.
Because they took also the theme of the team that is losing money, and they had a tax write-off.
Yeah,
and
it was
then they
perfect.
started. Well, that sort of happened to you in Rochester, because when the owners in Rochester bought the team, they even said when you started winning a lot, they said, "Geez, Don, we bought this team for a write-off." And
that's true.
You were filling the War Memorial.
Yeah, I remember
standing room only.
Yeah, Bob Clark come up to me and says, they had 8 owners. I'll go through that sometime. And they said, we're very upset with you, Don. And oh, geez, I'm thinking upset. Like we're
You're
winning.
winning, and the place is
Yeah.
full. And
And he says, we had bought this place for a write-off. And he said, for a $100,000 write-off. And he says, we're making $100,000.
right out of the movie.
Yeah, they picked out the whole, I never thought of that.
Yeah. And I think my favorite character was the GM, Strother
he's
Martin.
funny.
And
What's
he-
his name?
Strother Martin, and he did a lot of movies with
Yeah.
Tom Newman. He did Cool Hand Luke,
Yeah, he was the guy that said, we have a lack of communication.
Failure to Communicate.
Failure to communicate here.
He did. He was in Pocket Money, Butch Cassidy's Sundance Kid, Harper, and The Silver Chalice. So he did a lot of movies.
Oh,
with-
and I liked what he said. Well, we won't say what he said. Screw old-time hockey.
Yeah,
Eddie Shore. Screw Eddie Shore.
we're losing. They're
We're
burying us.
losing. Oh, I have to tell you one story, and then we'll have to go. We're going long here. So Scotty used to go, we were in the finals, and in those days, there used to be about 300 or 400 reporters watching the morning skate. Not like now, I don't know where they go. But anyhow, I think there's about 4 watches now. But anyhow, he used to call all the players in the corner, and okay, guys, we're going to beat the. So I thought, well, I better. It looks bad that I don't call guys in the corner too. That's like Scotty. So I called all the guys and I said, "Now look," and you got to remember, Strother. What's the Strother Martin?
Strother Martin. Yeah, the
Yeah,
GM.
he said this. He said, what did he say? He said, "There's
He
NHL."
goes. There's NHL scouts in the stands with contracts in their pockets. Look, scouting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I call the guys over in the corner and I said, "Okay, guys, I just want you to know, listen, there'll be National League scouts out there tonight." And they all laughed. Anyhow, that was the last thing. But that was a great movie, and I love the music. And like you said, I think music made it.
Yeah. One just other quick note that you know that there was one of the guys who played the Hansons actually was in your training camp in Colorado.
Yeah, and it was 2 brothers.
Right. There was Jack and Steve Carlson, and then they were supposed to have a third brother named Jeff.
Yeah.
But Jeff got called up because they all played the national.
Oh,
hockey.
they could play.
And Jeff got called up, so they had to bring another guy in, and they brought Dave Hansen in, and then they decided to use his last name, the Hansen brothers. And Dave, I think, was the guy that
I love
that went to. He was in your training camp in Colorado, and he went down to Oklahoma, I think, after.
There's so many good scenes in it. You could go on and on. But I liked it when the national anthem was being played, and the referee started to give him heck about, I'm not going to take any fooling around and anything. He said, I'm listening to the song.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. Well, that was a great movie. I think a lot of it, every hockey guy loves watching that movie. And it was, Rolling Stone magazine said that was the best sports movie of the 70s. But as you say, Dad, compared to your real life in the minor leagues, it pales in comparison.
Someday I'll tell you about all the stories that happened on the bus. 8 hours on the bus with guys about 23. You can imagine.